Hey guys, Dark Desert Highway here, and today we're going to read the Bible. I wanted to go to Deuteronomy and find Moses and his final speech to the Hebrew nation before they crossed over the Jordan to occupy the Promised Land, which had not yet been seized, because other people occupied this land, which was one of the problems before when the spies went across the land to go seek it out, and they saw giants, and they came back and gave a disheartening report to the Israelites or the Hebrew nation, and they rebelled against the Lord and decided that the enemy was too great for them. Then the Lord said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. And they said, well, we're here, so we might as well take the land. The Lord said, don't do it. I'm not going to be with you. They went in. They got destroyed. And then they wandered for 40 years in the desert. So here it is. They've come from their state of wandering, and all of the generation of the rebellious Hebrews in that first attempt for the Lord to lead them into the Promised Land failed. These are the ones that are standing at the Jordan River now are their children, and they're all grown up and they're ready to do this. And Moses had gotten into a situation where he was commanded to do something very specific, and he struck a rock when he was supposed to speak to a rock. So his punishment for that was that he was not going to go into the Promised Land with all of the people, but the Lord did lead him to the top of the mountain so that he could see all of the Promised Land, but he couldn't go over. So let's look at Moses' final speech in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 1. Actually, the speech goes on before chapter 29, but we're going to start right here. These are the words of the covenant that the Lord commanded Moses to make with the Israelites in the land of Moab, in addition to the covenant that he had made with them at Horeb. Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, "You have seen with your own eyes everything the Lord did in Egypt to Pharaoh, to all his officials, and to his entire land. You saw with your own eyes the great trials and those great signs and wonders. Yet to this day, the Lord has not given you a mind to understand, eyes to see, or ears to hear. I led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes and the sandals on your feet did not wear out. You did not eat food or drink wine or beer, so that you might know that I am the Lord your God. When you reached this place, King Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan came out against us in battle, but we defeated them. We took their land and gave it as an inheritance to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Therefore, observe the words of this covenant and follow them, so that you will succeed in everything that you do. All of you are standing today before the Lord your God, your leaders, tribes, elders, officials, all the men of Israel, your dependents, your wives, and the resident aliens in your camps who cut your wood and draw your water, so that you may enter into the covenant of the Lord your God, which he is making with you today, so that you may enter into his oath, and so that he may establish you today as his people, and he may be your God, as he promised you, and as he swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am making this covenant with you and this oath. I am making this covenant and this oath not only with you, but also with those who are standing here with us today in the presence of the Lord our God, and with those who are not here today. Indeed, you know how we lived in the land of Egypt and passed through the nations where you traveled. You saw their abhorrent images and idols made of wood, stone, silver, and gold, which were among them. Be sure there is no man, woman, clan, or tribe among you today whose heart turns away from the Lord our God to go and worship the gods of those nations. Be sure that there is no root among you bearing poisonous and bitter fruit, except someone, 19. When someone hears the words of this oath, he may consider himself exempt, thinking, I will have peace even though I follow my own stubborn heart. This will lead to the destruction of the well-watered land as well as the dry land. The Lord will not be willing to forgive him. Instead, his anger and jealousy will burn against that person, and every curse written in this scroll will descend on him. The Lord will blot out his name under heaven and single him out for the harm from all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant written in this book of the law. Future generations of your children who follow you and the foreigner who come out from a distant country will see the plagues of that land and the sicknesses the Lord has inflicted on it. All its soil will be a burning waste of sulfur and salt, unsown, producing nothing, with no plant growing on it, just like the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord demolished in his fierce anger. All the nations will ask, why has the Lord done this to this land? Why is this intense outburst of anger? Then people will answer, it is because they abandoned the covenant of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, which he had made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. They began to serve other gods, bowing in worship to gods they had not known, gods that the Lord had not permitted them to worship. Therefore, the Lord's anger burned against this land, and he brought every curse written in this book on it. The Lord uprooted them from their land in his anger, rage, and intense wrath, and threw them into another land where they are today. The hidden things belong to the Lord our God, but the revealed things belong to us and our children forever, so that we may follow all the words of this law. So I'm going to take a break here for a second. There's been something that I've been thinking about lately, and it's an impossible thing to separate yourself from the spiritual laws that are in place that the Lord has set. You may not have knowledge of the Lord, but that doesn't mean that he has not set his ways. There are very specific paths of which to walk. Now, there's some that lead to consequence, and there's some that lead to blessing. But these things have already been established as a way to walk and as a way to avoid. And if you happen to be practicing things in your life that bring about a curse, You may not know of it because you haven't read the word of the Lord, and you do not understand that it is because of this behavioral pattern that you have brought a curse upon yourself and your household. So it's important that we understand the principles, the guidelines that God has set, not to cross, but to follow, so that we can align ourselves with God's will and his word and find success. These things have been laid out for us plainly in the word of the Lord, but we only know about them if we happen to hear about them from somebody else. And that means that somebody else needs to be talking about this. Or if we invest ourselves into reading the words in this book and we start to understand, maybe this is why. Maybe this is why it feels like I'm running against the wind. And I sow, but I don't reap. I put all my effort into things that are nothing. And it feels like I'm not making any progress in life. As a matter of fact, I see the destroyer in my life, taking the things that I've worked for, separating me from family and friends. So it's very important that even, and you'll notice that even the sojourner, the person who wasn't a Hebrew himself, but ended up walking alongside the Hebrews as one who would cut wood for their fire or draw water, or the sojourner, the passerby. And the passerby says, you know what, I like what you guys got going on. I'm going to join with you. And they allow him in. And he was also just as responsible as the Hebrews were to obey the commands of the Lord. So let's continue in 30. When all these things happen to you, the blessings and curses I have set before you, and you come to your senses while you are in all the nations where the Lord your God has driven you, and you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul by doing everything I am commanding you today. Then he will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. So here's another spiritual principle. When all these things happen to you, the blessings and curses, and you come to your senses, and you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him with all your heart and all your soul by doing everything I am commanding you today. So it's very important. This isn't just an idle belief. It's very interactive. We need to change our ways. When the curse happens to us, we need to know that it is because I have turned away from the Lord that my life has now been affected, because it will happen. Or when the blessing is upon you because you faithfully and diligently obey him with all your heart and your soul, then either way the coin is, right? If you're experiencing the blessings, awesome. That's great. That's a good place to be. But if you're experiencing the curses, then you need to identify in your life where you have stopped following the Lord. Okay. Then he will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you, and gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. Even if your exiles are at the farthest horizon, he will gather you and bring you back from there. The Lord your God will bring you into the land your ancestors possessed, and you will take possession of it. He will cause you to prosper and multiply you more than he did your ancestors. The Lord your God will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your descendants, and you will love him with all your heart and all your soul, so that you will live. The Lord your God will put all these curses on your enemies who hate and persecute you. Then you will again obey him and follow all his commands I am commanding you today. The Lord your God will make you prosper abundantly in all the work of your hands, your offspring, the offspring of your livestock, and the produce of your land. Indeed, the Lord will again delight in your prosperity, as he delighted in that of your ancestors. When you obey the Lord your God by keeping his commands and statutes that are written in this book of the law, and return to him with all your heart and all your soul. It couldn't have been said better. When you obey the Lord your God by keeping his commands and statutes that are written in this book of the law, and return to him with all your heart and all your soul. This command that I give you today is certainly not too difficult or beyond your reach. It is not in the heaven, so that you have to ask, who will go up to heaven, get it for us, and proclaim it to us, so that we may follow it. And it is not across the sea, so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea and get it for us and proclaim it to us, so that we may follow it. But the message is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, so that you may follow it. See, today I have set before you life and prosperity, death and adversity. For I am commanding you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, statutes, ordinances, so that you may live and multiply, and the Lord your God may bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away, and you do not listen, and you are led astray to bow and worship to other gods and serve them, I tell you today that you will certainly perish and will not prolong your days in the land you are entering to possess across the Jordan. I call heaven and earth as a witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, so that you and your descendants may live. Love the Lord your God, obey him, and remain faithful to him, for he is your life, and he will prolong your days as you live in the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, it's so well said that I don't even need to say anything about it. Listen to the way that the word is speaking to your heart. 31. Then Moses continued to speak these words to all Israel, saying, I am now 120 years old. I can no longer act as your leader. The Lord has told me you will not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God is the one who will cross ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you will drive them out. Joshua is the one who will cross ahead of you, as the Lord had said. The Lord will deal with them as he did Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and their land when he destroyed them. The Lord will deliver them over to you, and you must do to them exactly as I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified or afraid of them. For the Lord your God is the one who will go with you. He will not leave or abandon you. Moses then summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you will go with this people into the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors. You will enable them to take possession of it. The Lord is the one who will go before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or abandon you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Moses wrote down this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, and to all the elders of Israel. Moses commanded them, At the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time, in the year of debt cancellation, during the festival of shelters, when all Israel assembles in the presence of the Lord your God at the place he chooses, you are to read this law aloud before all Israel. Gather the people, men, women, dependents, and the resident aliens within your city gates, so that they may listen and learn to fear the Lord your God, and be careful to follow all the words of this law. Then their children, who do not know the law, will listen and learn to fear the Lord your God. As long as you live in this land, you are crossing the Jordan to possess. The Lord said to Moses, The time of your death is now approaching. Call Joshua and present yourselves at the tent of meeting so that I may commission him. When Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves at the tent of meeting, the Lord appeared at the tent in a pillar of cloud, and the cloud stood at the entrance to the tent. The Lord said to Moses, You are about to rest with your ancestors, and these people will soon prostitute themselves with foreign gods of the land they are entering. They will abandon me and break the covenant I have made with them. My anger will burn against them on that day. I will abandon them and hide my face from them so that they will become easy prey. Many troubles and afflictions will come to them. On that day they will say, Haven't these troubles come to us because our God is no longer with us? I will certainly hide my face on that day because of all the evil they have done by turning to other gods. Therefore, write down this song for yourselves and teach it to the Israelites. Have them sing it so that this song may be a witness for me against the Israelites. When I bring them into the land which I swore to give to their ancestors, a land flowing with milk and honey, they will eat their fill and prosper. They will turn to other gods and worship them, despising me and breaking my covenant. And when many troubles and afflictions come to them, this song will testify against them, because their descendants will not have forgotten it. For I know what they are prone to do. Even before I bring them into this land I swore to give to them. So Moses wrote down the song on that day and taught it to the Israelites. The Lord commissioned Joshua, son of Nun, Be strong and courageous, for you will bring the Israelites into the land I swore to them, and I will be with you. When Moses had finished writing down on a scroll every single word of this law, he commanded the Levites who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, Take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, so that it may remain there as a witness against you. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. If you are rebelling against the Lord now, while I am still alive, how much more will you rebel after I am dead? Assemble all your tribal elders and officers before me, so that I may speak these words directly to them. and call heaven and earth as witnesses against them. For I know that after my death you will become completely corrupt and turn from the path I have commanded you. Disaster will come to you in the future, because you will do what is evil in the Lord's sight, angering him with what your hands have made. Then Moses recited aloud every single word of this song to the entire assembly of Israel. Pay attention, heavens, and I will speak. Listen, earth, to the words from my mouth. Let my teaching fall like rain, and my words settle like dew, like gentle rain on new grass, and showers on tender plants. For I will proclaim the Lord's name, declare the greatness of our God, the rock. His work is perfect. All his ways are just. A faithful God, without bias, he is righteous and true. His people have acted corruptly toward him. This is their defect. They are not his children, but a devious and crooked generation. Is this how you repay the Lord, you foolish and senseless people? Isn't he your father and creator? Didn't he make you and sustain you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of past generations. Ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will teach you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance and divided the human race, he set the boundaries of the peoples, according to the number of the people of Israel. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his own inheritance. He found them in a desolate land, in a barren, hollowing wilderness. He surrounded him, cared for him, and protected him as the pupil of his eye. He watches over his nest like an eagle and hovers over his young. He spreads his wing, catches him, and carries him on his feathers. The Lord alone led him, with no help from a foreign god. He made him ride on the heights of the land and eat the produce of the field. He nourished him with honey from the rock and oil from flinty rock, curds from the herds and milk from the flock, with the fat of lambs, rams from Bashan, and goats, with the choicest grains of wheat. You drank wine from the finest grapes. Then Jeshurun became fat and rebelled. You became fat, bloated, and gorged. He abandoned the God who made him and scorned the rock of his salvation. They provoked his jealousy with different gods. They enraged him with detestable practices. They sacrificed to demons, not God, to gods they had not known, new gods that had just arrived, which your ancestors did not fear. You ignored the rock who gave you birth. You forgot the God who gave birth to you. When the Lord saw this, he despised them. Angered by his sons and daughters, he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what will become of them, for they are a perverse generation, unfaithful children. They have provoked my jealousy with what is not a God. They have enraged me with their worthless idols. So I will provoke their jealousy with what is not a people. I will enrage them with a foolish nation. For fire has been kindled because of my anger and burns to the depths of Sheol. It devours the land and its produce and scorches the foundations of mountains. I will pile disasters on them. I will use up my arrows against them. They will be weak from hunger, ravaged by pestilence and bitter plague. I will unleash on them wild beasts with fangs, as well as venomous snakes that slither in the dust. Outside the sword will take their children, and inside there will be terror. The young man and the young woman will be killed, the infant and the gray-haired man. I would have said, I will cut them to pieces and blot out the memory of them from mankind. If I had not feared provocation from the enemy, or feared that the foes might misunderstand and say, our own hand has prevailed against us. It wasn't the Lord who did all this. Just checking. Israel is a nation lacking sense, with no understanding at all. If only they were wise, they would comprehend this. They would have understood their fate. How could one pursue 1,000, or two put 10,000 to flight, unless their rock had sold them, unless the Lord had given them up? But their rock is not like our rock, and even our enemies concede. For their vine is from the vine of Sodom and from the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are poisonous, their clusters are bitter, their wine is serpent's venom, the deadly poison of cobras. Is it not stored up with me, sealed up in my vaults? Vengeance belongs to me. I will repay. In time their foot will slip, for their day of disaster is near, and their doom is coming quickly. The Lord will indeed vindicate his people and have compassion on his servants when he sees that their strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free. He will say, where are their gods? The rock they found refuge in, who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offerings. Let them rise up and help you. Let it be a shelter for you. See now that I alone am he, and there is no God but me. I bring death, and I give life. I wound, and I heal. No one can rescue anyone from my power. I raise my hand to heaven and declare, as surely as I live forever, when I sharpen my flashing sword, when my hand takes hold of judgment, I will take vengeance on my adversaries and repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, while my sword devours the flesh, the blood of the slain and the captives, the heads of enemy leaders. Rejoice, you nations, concerning his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will take vengeance on his adversaries. He will purify the land and his people. Moses came with Joshua, son of Nun, and recited all the words of this song in the presence of the people. After Moses finished reciting all the words to Israel, he said to them, take to heart all these words I am giving you as a warning today, so that you may command your children to follow all the words of this law carefully. For they are not meaningless words to you, but they are your life, and by them you will live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. On that same day the Lord spoke to Moses, go up to Mount Nebo in the Abram range in the land of Moab, across from Jericho, and view the land of Canaan I am giving to the Israelites as a possession. Then you will die on the mountain that you go up, and you will be gathered with your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. For both of you broke faith with me among the Israelites at the waters of Meribeth Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, by failing to treat me as holy in their presence. Although from a distance you will view the land that I am giving to the Israelites, but you will not go there. And we're going to skip to chapter 34. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which faces Jericho, and the Lord showed him all the land. Gilead as far as Dan, all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the plain in the valley of Jericho, the city of palms as far as Zoar. The Lord then said to him, this is the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross into it. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the Lord's words. He buried him. The Lord buried Moses personally. He buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, facing Beth Peor, and no one to this day knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not weak, and his vitality had not left him. The Israelites wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses came to an end. Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites obeyed him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. No prophet has arisen again in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. He was unparalleled for all the signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do against the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh, to all his officials, and to all his land, and for all the mighty acts of his power and terrifying deeds that Moses performed in the sight of all Israel. So, that was the final speech of Moses. That was a lot of reading today, and I hope that we all got through it. And if you made it this far, go ahead and hit the like, share button, subscribe, have a comment down below, and let's start talking about the Bible.